Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. On Capitol Hill, a highly chaotic confirmation hearing for Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh began on Tuesday as protesters repeatedly interrupted the proceedings.
This is a mockery and a travesty of justice. This is a travesty of justice. We will not go back. Cancel Brett Kavanaugh. Adjourn the hearing. We need him to be in.
Judge Brett Kavanaugh is President Trump's pick to replace Justice Anthony Kennedy. Democratic senators on the committee also repeatedly interrupted Senate Judiciary Committee Chair Charles Grassley to demand he halt the hearings and allow time to pore over information contained in a last-minute dump of 40,000 documents from Kavanaugh's time in the White House counsel's office. The Trump administration is also withholding more than 100,000 pages of Kavanaugh's records on the basis of presidential privilege. We'll have more on the first day of Kavanaugh's confirmation hearings after headlines. The Trump administration says it'll end all U.S. funding for UNRWA, the UN agency that provides humanitarian aid to Palestinians. The move is seen as an effort to undermine Palestinians' right to return to the lands they were displaced from by Israeli settlers. This is Chief Palestinian negotiator Saeb Erekat.
So now this is an American political decision added to their decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital, move the embassy, consider settlements illegal, refuse the two-state solution 6-7. So actually this is the program and the agenda of Children Adelson and Benjamin Netanyahu. The United States may have the right to say we don't want to give taxpayers money, but who gave the U.S. the right to approve the stealing of my land, my future, my aspiration, my capital, my Aqsa Mosque, my Holy Sepulchre Church? They have no right whatsoever.
In immigration news, nearly 500 children remain separated from their parents more than a month after a court-imposed deadline mandating the Trump administration reunite all children immigration officials forcibly separated from their parents at the border. Court papers filed Thursday reveal 497 children are still in U.S. custody. 22 of the children are under the age of 5. California Congresswoman Barbara Lee slammed the administration for failing to reunite the children and their parents, tweeting, "This is government-sanctioned child abuse. It's a violation of human rights, and it's another stain on our nation's soul." A highly anticipated book by longtime Washington Post reporter Bob Woodward depicts the Trump administration as an out-of-control operation, with Chief of Staff John Kelly reportedly calling the White House crazy town. Among the revelations in the book, Defense Secretary Jim Mattis reportedly said Trump has the understanding of a 5th or 6th grader, and Trump reportedly said his decision to finally condemn the deadly white supremacist violence in Charlottesville, Virginia last year was, quote, "the biggest effing mistake I've made," unquote. Trump had previously refused to condemn the white supremacists, instead claiming there was violence on both sides. The book is titled Fear, Trump and the White House. Now we move on to business news. Amazon has become the second-ever U.S. company to reach $1 trillion in market value. The first was Apple. Amazon's founder and chief executive, Jeff Bezos, is now the richest man in the world, with a net worth of more than $167 billion. Later in the broadcast, we'll take a look at what's behind Amazon's wealth and the labor conditions for the more than 500,000 Amazon workers. In California, lawmakers have passed a bill aimed at guaranteeing full and equal access to the Internet in a major rebuke to the Trump administration's rollback of federal net neutrality laws. If California Governor Jerry Brown signs the bill into law, California will become the 4th state to enact a net neutrality law since the FCC eliminated Obama-era rules last year. In Mexico, a television reporter was assassinated last week in the city of Cancun, making him at least the 8th journalist assassinated in Mexico so far this year. Javier Enrique Rodriguez Valladares worked as a cameraman and reporter for the local station Channel 10. Mexico is one of the most dangerous countries in the world for journalists. In Japan, the worst typhoon to hit Japan in 25 years has swept through the archipelago, killing at least 10 people, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. Typhoon Jebi knocked out power for at least 2 million people and forced the closure of hundreds of schools and businesses in Kyoto and Osaka. In Iraq, security forces killed at least 5 people in the southern city of Baghdad Basra as widespread demonstrations continue over the lack of basic services, including clean drinking water in the oil-rich region. Residents say the security forces opened fire on a funeral procession Tuesday for a protester killed Monday. This is a relative of the slain protester, Mahdi Ali.
We were attending the funeral procession of the martyr who died yesterday, and security forces opened fire on us, and they used tear gas to disperse protesters, therefore provoking protesters who were angry over the death of their brother. Protesters then tried to storm into the building of the provincial government, and they were confronted with bullets and tear gas. Down with the political parties.
Prisoners are striking from Florida to Washington as the national prison strike heads into its third and final week. Prisoners in at least 13 states are participating in work stoppages, sit-ins, commissary boycotts, and hunger strikes to demand better conditions, fair pay for work, access to education, greater rehabilitative services, and the right to vote. This is Ronald Brooks speaking in a video recorded at Angola prison in Louisiana.
We are anti-slavery and are organizing to transform our ghettos into communities and our jails and prisons into places of human redemption, healing, higher learning that enable us to be productive in our communities and wherever our feet touch the land.
Meanwhile, in the Northwest Detention Center in Tacoma, Washington, 4 immigrants have reached the 14th day of their hunger strike. This is Murat Azanias, an immigrant from Russia, who says he will keep hunger striking till he's released. He spoke to Democracy Now! From the detention center Tuesday.
So I'm in critical conditions now. I'm weak critically. For me, very hard to even reach the sink or shower.
To see our full coverage of the ongoing nationwide prison strike, go to democracynow.org. And in Massachusetts, primary voters went to the polls Tuesday. Boston City Council member Ayana Presley made history by defeating 10-term Progressive Democratic Congressmember Michael Capuano. She's now slated to be Massachusetts' first-ever African-American congressmember. Presley was endorsed by New York congressional candidate Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and other progressives. She ran on a platform of abolishing ICE, that's the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, and speaking for prisoners behind bars. She's also been outspoken about as a rape and sexual assault survivor. She solidly defeated Capuano despite his long progressive record, including voting against the Iraq War and supporting Medicare for all. This is Ayana Presley in her victory speech Tuesday night.
While our president is a racist, misogynistic, truly empathy bankrupt man, the conditions which have made the 7th CD one of the most unequal in America were cemented through policies long before he ever descended the escalator at Trump Tower.
Ayana Presley had worked for Congressmember Joe Kennedy, who Capuano replaced. She also worked for Senator John Kerry. In another upset, emergency room doctor John Santiago defeated longtime Democratic state legislator Byron Rushing, and Rachel Rollins won the Democratic nomination in Massachusetts for Suffolk County District Attorney on a platform of criminal justice reform, including ending cash bail for low-level offenses. And in more election news, in Chicago, Mayor Rahm Emanuel says he will not run for re-election next year. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world.